Deputy is 4 minutes for.
Thank you very much, Cathaoirleach. Yeah, €346 million, Minister, was targeted for savings, and I've been asking this question now for quite a long time, and I cannot get an answer. So the 346 million is described as a targeted savings measure. And that sounds great, and that actually sounds like a lot of work went into how it was going to be designed. But I've asked very senior people in the HSE, and I've asked people in the Department of Health, and indeed I've asked one of your colleagues, and I simply cannot get an answer as to where that figure came from. Now, the cynic in me says, somebody said we should just throw down 350 million, and someone else said, no, actually, do you know what, if we say 346 million, it'll look like we have actually identified some targets, or we have actually done some work on this, and I cannot see. Now, the target was missed, by the way. I think that you'll obviously be aware of that. So I wonder why it was set in the first place. And perhaps that's where, if we're going to investigate that together, that may be where we start, is where the targeted savings came up from. See, when I see targeted savings measures, I think targets and savings and amounts and measures, but all I see is a figure, and nobody can actually support that. The Fiscal Advisory Council had some very, very wise words that, Minister, you would do well, and the people in your department, and indeed the HSE, to heed. They said that health budgets should be well-founded and credible. They further went on to speak about the budgetary process within the health service that you preside over, and they described it as suffering from weak planning and weak spending controls. So that's not me saying it, although I do say it, but I actually have the backing of the Fiscal Advisory Council on this. So the figure of €346 million was a target that was set by was given to the HSE for them to achieve that saving. But I have no idea, and I have been questioning quite a number of people on it, and the more I question and the lack of answers becomes more apparent, the more worried I get that this was in fact a figure that was plucked from the air. And I spoke to one of your colleagues about this, and it's on the record of the Health Committee, but I'll say it again, I sincerely hope that you don't get the figure from the same place as the lads we all heard on the phone call got their figures, because that, to me, is how it looks, because nobody has been able to justify to me where that figure came from. When you sat down with the HSE to come up with the figure, or did you just give the figure to the HSE and tell them to go and achieve it, or did the HSE come to you with the figure? Because everyone I have asked hasn't been able to tell me where that figure was arrived at. And if you can tell me, and I sincerely hope you can tell me, well then perhaps you might be able to give me a list of what were the targeted savings measures. So what was targeted, what amount was targeted, and by how much did it fall short? Because we know that the target wasn't reached. That is established and acknowledged, and I don't think anyone is going to dispute me on that. But the target, if the target wasn't reached, have we any idea why such an overly ambitious target was established, given that the health service is underfunded? Because the reason we know the health service is underfunded is because we were discussing the supplementary budget at the Health Committee only this week. So we know that the health service is underfunded, and yet in the midst of that, somebody thinks that €346 million of savings can be made.
Thank you, Deputy. And Talis Dodge.
I thank Deputy Louise for a very, very important question, and I hope we can get to the bottom of that particular issue. Can I say that in relation to the HSE National Service Plan set out in 2018 funding for health services totalling €14.556 million, €14.441 million was originally allocated to the HSE by the Department, with the €145.5 million held back for new developments, most of which has since been released. The National Service Plan for 2018 included the establishment of a Value Improvement Programme, the VIPs I call them, which considered how to reduce the costs of delivering services without impacting negatively on either the level or the quality of such services. The HSE prepared their annual service plan on the basis of a set of estimates and assumptions. In terms of calculating the value improvement programme target of 346 million in the 2018 plan, the HSE went through the process which looked at what was the level of service it could currently provide with the available funding, what level of activity that could be tailored to fit the funding, and what level of activity was almost entirely driven by demand. The health service is very complex, as you know, Deputy. It is the provider of last resort, the provider of 24/7 services and a place of safety. There are a number of areas, including emergency departments in hospitals, disability, residential placements and similar areas in which the level of activity will happen, even if there is not a specific funding for it. And I know this myself from disability crisis situations. The HSE, through their planning process, determined a need for savings of 346 million. A core national team was established to support the system in delivering the Value Improvement Programme, working as part of the Performance Improvement Management Unit. Despite the initial promising start, progress in identifying and advancing proposals and actually securing the targeted savings was slower than anticipated. Contributing factors to this was the significant operational management pressure due to the winter surge, extensive flu season and storm emergencies, and particular calls on the VIP senior team to support the GDPR implementation. The HSE is now putting in place appropriate resources across the system to ensure the delivery of progress on the programme. There were 3 distinct themes within the overall programme. The HSE led on 2 themes focused respectively on a cost reduction programme at service level and a corporate value programme. The service level programme focused on cash releasing initiatives in 2018, such as reductions in the use of agency and conversion to full-time permanent posts, where the latter 2 are local and not linked to corporate level initiatives, such as, for example, the nursing task force, and renegotiated supplies and utilities contracts. The HSE identified a 77 million savings target in this area. In the corporate value programme, the HSE was tasked with identifying savings and cost reduction across its entire corporate operation. This might include better control of central administrative costs, such as travel and better management of supplies. It was envisaged that this programme would identify savings of 119 million. A number of savings initiatives are in progress. Work is ongoing with respect to the number of corporate levels initiatives identified earlier in the year. Additionally, within the overall VIP, the Department of Health would work with the HSE with a shared governance and oversight framework on a strategic value programme. This would be a multi-year strategic initiative with the intention of achieving savings of 150 million in 2018 through identifying and implementing savings from productivity, improved models of care, policy implementation and delivery of service reform. To date, the most progress has occurred in the VIP1, which had an overall savings target of 77 million. The targeted savings were allocated over acute hospitals and CHOs, and the HSE has indicated that the expected realisation in 2018 will be approximately 60 million, with the acute hospitals largely achieving their targets, but the CHOs falling somewhat short. VIP2 savings are being assessed across all parts of the system, and this review will be reported at end of year. There was no progress on VIP3 in 2018, and this has contributed to the 150 million to the deficit in the HSE, which will be funded via a supplementary estimate. It is, however, envisaged that the groundwork undertaken during the year will support and promote value improvement measures to be established in the context of 2019. I hope that goes in some way in answering your question, Deputy.
Deputy Louise Riley. 2 more minutes.
Minister, now I didn't think anyone could confuse me even more, but fair play to you. So what you're saying in your response is the HSE, through their planning process, determined a need for savings. So the HSE said there was a need for these savings and they established it themselves. Okay. Now, you'll appreciate that that's not exactly what they said to me, but that's fine. You managed to, okay, so the targets weren't hit because of the winter surge that happens every single year. Not just winter, but the winter surge that happens every single year, and that surprised you. And then you also got surprised by the flu and then the storms. Okay, that's fair enough, perhaps the storms, but I really don't accept the other two. And now you say that the HSE is now putting in place, so these are the savings for 2018, and we're now in December, but they're now putting in place appropriate resources across the system to ensure delivery of progress on the programme. So I'm not a big fan of you have to speculate to accumulate, okay, but that's essentially what you're doing. You're putting money in so that the delivery of the progress on the programme can be ensured. And you see, that now leads me to another question, Minister, which is how much money? So you didn't hit the targets on the 346 million for reasons that I have to tell you straight up I don't accept as being valid reasons, but that's fine, they're the reasons you have. You didn't hit that target, but now out of some other budget, money is going to be provided to the HSE to facilitate them putting in place appropriate resources across the system to ensure delivery of progress on the programme. And then a multi-year strategic initiative there I see down at the end of the reply. But again, these are targeted savings for 1 year. So a multi-year strategic initiative presumably will have multi-annual savings stacked into it. Do you see why I might be a bit confused, Minister? Are you in a position to shed any light on it? This is something that I find absolutely, and I'm a lover of detective novels when I get the time to read them, and I think Miss Marple is going to struggle with this. But well, let's see if there's any. Can you identify the amount that you're now going to be putting in to achieve the process that's going to evaluate how you didn't achieve the savings, because that, I think, is one that people might be interested in.
Minister, the Topical.
I want to thank the Deputy for raising the very, very important questions, and there are times when I get confused myself as well, Deputy. But can I say, just my initial response is in relation to the HSE did say there was needs for savings, and the bottom line is that there are a number of areas, including the emergency departments in hospitals. And I know myself in the disability sector, there are some times when there's emergency cases, and a case can go off, an emergency case go from a normal residential place of 80 or 90,000 euro goes up to maybe 250 euro in a crisis situation. There are residential placements as well, and similar areas in level of activity. There is no specific funding from us. That's basically the first point. The second point is the HSE has indicated to me a series of actions being undertaken to maximise the delivery of the value for improvement targets, whilst at the same time not impacting on the ability of the HSE to deliver on the planned activity levels set out in the NSP 2018. Delivery of savings are in progress, which reflects the success of the service level initiatives undertaken. And the HSE has indicated that the expected realisation in 2018 will be approximately 60 million. Work is ongoing with respect to the number of corporate levels initiatives and will be reported by the end of the year. But of course, on the other questions you raise, I will raise them, Minister Harris, and try and come back to it with an accurate response.
Thank you, Minister. Next is